Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Chapter 14, where we are talking about plant structures. This is the third one in the section, and we're getting close to the end here. Okay, let's start with angiosperms. Remember, angiosperms are things with flowers. We specifically are going to be talking about reproductive structures today for angiosperms and gymnosperms. Remember, angiosperms, flowers and fruit. Gymnosperms have the naked seeds, so they are the cones, or the one exception being the ginkgo. Okay, you can see in the upper left the inside of a tulip. That is kind of what we're representing by the drawing here. Okay, first off, the part you already know, the petals. Okay, what these are for is primarily they are going to attract insects to the plant for pollination. Pollination, getting the pollen spread from plant to plant. Most plants cannot self-pollinate, although a lot of plants are both male and female, as you'll see. Some plants are just male, some plants are just female. It just kind of depends on the species. Okay, so the petals primarily are going to attract pollinators. Sometimes it is by appearance, sometimes it is by scent. Generally, if the petals are very flamboyant with lots of bright, spectacular colors, there's not a whole lot of scent. Oftentimes very plain-looking flowers, like the flowers of a palm tree, which you probably hardly even notice, actually have an amazing scent. Okay, right below them, structures you probably have seen but don't even think about, are the sepals. They look like little leaves. They are right at the bottom. Okay, we have a receptacle that's basically just where the stalk doesn't attack. It would be scary. Okay, up here, if you look and follow it down, you see the stringy things that stick up. These are called stamens. They are the male structures. Okay, so you have this long stalk type thing that comes up here. That is the filament, and the part that is on the top is called the anther. Okay, the anther is what is going to produce the pollen. The pollen is actually what contains sperm cells inside. Okay, there are a couple sperm inside. Some depends on the type of species, but sometimes there's just one in each. Okay, but this is the male structure of a flower. So if you're looking at the photograph, you can see them right here. So when you think pollen, think male, think sperm. Okay, now the female section of the plant, you can see this whole section right in the middle. The tulip, you can see it right here. That is the carpel, the female part. Okay, carp in this case just means body. It also is sometimes translated corp, C-O-R-P, the same root word. This is the body, the part that in this case is female. Okay, sitting up at the top, right here, you have the stigma. This is the top. This whole thing, by the way, is known as a pistil. P-I-S-T-I-L, not like the gun. Okay, this is the pistil, and the top of it, the stigma, is very sticky. It actually releases a liquid, which you may have noticed if you've ever paid attention to certain flowers. It's a sticky liquid so that the pollen will stick to it. This long part right here is known as the style. And although you may not think about it with plants, this part right here is the ovary. Okay, now what you will see inside of the ovary, these are called ovules, and this is basically the parts that can become seeds. Okay, and the seeds are going to contain the new plant, obviously. Okay, so the male structures that produce pollen, the pollen contains the sperm. Those are made in the anther. You have the stigma. Stigma is sticky. Just remember that. Sticky stigma. The style, holding it up. And then the ovary down at the base. Okay, now let's see what all of this does. Okay, sorry it's not as clear as the last picture, but it is the best picture that there was. Okay, so here's the anther. It's on the outside, okay, with a filament coming down. And here is our pollen grain, okay, the stuff that turns your cars yellow. Now, the pollen grain oftentimes is spread by insects, spread by wind. It really just depends on the type of plant that it is. But what needs to happen is that pollen needs to land up here on the stigma. And you can see here there's a few pollen grains that have landed on the stigma. Now, pollen actually has specialized enzymes with the sperm that then will start digesting these pollen tubes down through the style. And the sperm will travel down these pollen tubes, and you can see right here it says sperm nuclei. Not one, but multiples. Okay? So this process is actually known as double fertilization because in this case it requires 2 sperm for the plant to properly form seeds. Okay, so these sperm come down through these pollen tubes that eat through the style, and then they go to these ovules. And like I said, these ovules are what are going to become seeds. Now, you can see right here, you have the egg nucleus. So this is the part inside the ovule that is officially the egg. Okay, but you can see also these are the things called polar nuclei, and those are formed in the process of cell division when the egg nucleus is formed. These are kind of cast-offs, if you will. They don't have the DNA for the plant like the egg nucleus does, but they will become useful. Okay, so the sperm are coming down, and one sperm combines with the egg and forms the zygote. Okay, you've heard that term before. It's just what the egg and sperm combine to make. Now, the polar nuclei get fertilized, and they become what is known as the endosperm nucleus. And you can see it changes. Now, all of this happens, and while this is developing and the cell division is happening, just like in people, you have these 2 parts, and what you end up with is a seed that is going to be formed. Now, the seed actually has a number of things going on inside. This is pretty easy to see if you've ever looked inside a peanut and split it open and actually paid attention to it. The part you're used to seeing and probably not eating so much is the seed coat. Okay, this is not the shell around the outside of a peanut. This is that paper material on the peanut. Okay, it is there, it protects the seed. Now, in something like an apple, that seed coat is very, very thick on the outside of an apple seed. It's that brown spotted stuff on the outside of the seed. Okay, the seed coat, depending on what kind of seed it is and how it is transported, will take on various things. Because a peanut has a shell, it doesn't need a very thick seed coat. However, an apple seed generally goes all the way through an organism having been eaten, and it will come out pretty much the same as it went in. The digestive juices and things kind of break down the seed coat a little bit for letting moisture in for growth, and comes preset with fertilizer. Now, back to the peanut idea. If you look inside, you notice this little plant-looking thing that's on one side of it. That is the embryo. That's what the zygote became, is the embryo. This is the part that is actually the plant. Now, if you look at the peanut, you can see it is a teeny tiny part when you eat a peanut. Okay? But that is the part that's going to become the peanut plant. Now, the endosperm nucleus became the endosperm. It's all of the rest of the seed. Okay, so most of what you're eating when you eat a peanut is not embryo, it's endosperm. Now, the endosperm is primarily starch. And if you remember way back to near the beginning of the year, we talked about how starch is stored food. Now, an embryo needs to grow and develop, and it needs nutrients to do that. So the endosperm actually feeds the embryo until the embryo gains roots to get the water, and especially is gaining leaves in order to make food. It needs to be fed until it is able to feed itself. So the endosperm would kind of be like the placenta being attached to the mom. It's a way for baby to get food until baby is able to get food for itself. Okay, so this is the process of reproduction, referred to as double fertilization because it requires 2 sperm per seed. And you have the different parts of the seed here until baby is able to grow. Okay, now with gymnosperms, it's a little bit different, but not horribly different. Most pine trees, if you look at them, they have different cones in different places, and you may have just looked at it before and thought, oh, small cones, big cones, or cones that aren't grown very much yet. However, most of the time at the top, you have what are called the male cones, and these will be the small little cones up at the top of the tree. These are referred to as pollen cones because just like with the angiosperms, the males produce pollen. Okay, so we talk about pollen all over your car. It is the pollen produced by the male pollen cones. Okay, they are going to release the pollen, and lower in the tree, which makes sense, you have the female cones. Okay, so those are going to be the bottom part of the tree. And these are the seed cones. These are the ones that are going to develop the seeds, just like in angiosperms. Now, the difference being is they don't have all of the pistil and the style and all of that going on. They just have the individual ovules inside of each little spot on the cone. So when the pollen comes down, it doesn't burrow through into the ovule through all of those other structures. Remember, it's called a naked seed. It doesn't have all of that. It just has the ovule. So the pollen comes, it lands on the sticky parts of the seed cones, and then the pollen will burrow right into the ovule and make the seeds. When you see the cone open, that means it has already been pollinated and that it's getting ready to release the seeds. If it's still closed, that means that it has not yet been pollinated. Okay? So you can see some of the reproductive structures of angiosperms and gymnosperms. Until next time.